heaven put on human clothes. Bring the news, God did not forget His promise that was sent from the prophet's old. The answer came in a secret birth. Truth and justice began mine. The hope and the peace on earth rested in the hands of a newborn child. Hey, hey, from God in the highest, heaven made a way in a manger. From God in the highest, love was born through a simple virgin girl. It took a child to save the world. For the ones who were lost again, every child of that arms fall. Emmanuel was the precious name of the small boy who would grow and would touch his heart. Whoa. Down in the night, heaven made a way in a manger. Love was born through a simple virgin girl. A child to save the world. Out in the night, heaven made a way in a manger. Out in the highest, love was born through a simple virgin girl. A child to save. And the nations bow to the baby so divine. As we lift up our voices now, praises to the Savior of all mankind. Wow! Out in the highest, heaven made a way in a manger. Love was born through a simple virgin girl. Took a child to save the world. Out in the highest, heaven made a way in a manger. Out in the highest, love was born through a simple virgin girl. Took a child to save the world. A child to save the world, yeah. God so loved, you believe that gave His only Son. He came to seek the lost like you and I. Came to seek, save, lead us back to Him. God so loved the world. God so loved the world.
Right. Start this back. Forgive me. Had no sign.
All the angels held their breath as heaven put on human clothes. Rang the news, God did not forget His promise that was sent from the prophet's old. The answer came in a secret birth. Truth and justice began mine. The hope and the peace on earth rested in the hands of a newborn child. Hey, hey, from God in the highest, heaven made a way in a manger. Love was born through a simple virgin girl. It child to save the world. Yeah, yeah. For the ones who are lost again, every child of that arms fall. Emmanuel was the precious name of the small boy who would grow and would touch his heart. Whoa. Out in the night, heaven made a way in a manger. Out in the highest, love was born through a simple virgin girl. Hey, the child to save the world. Out in the highest, heaven made a way in a manger. Out in the highest, love was born through a simple virgin girl. The child to save the world. So let the kings and the nations bow to the baby so divine. As we lift up our voices now, praises to the Savior of all mankind. Whoa! Out in the night, heaven made a way in a manger. Out in the highest, love was born through a simple virgin girl. Took a child to save the world. Out in the highest, heaven made a way in a manger. Out in the highest, love was born through a simple virgin girl. Took a child to save the world. So love the world that gave his only son. Took a child to save the world, yeah. God so loved, you believe that gave his only son. He came to seek the lost like you and I. Yeah. Came to lead us back to him. God so loved the world. God so loved the world that he gave his only son. If you will believe in him, you will have. You will believe in him, eternal life you find.
Greetings. 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 It is I, King Clifford Jefferson, a descendant of Godfrey the fifth Caliban Jew, son of Folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I am the reincarnation of that person you identify as Jesus Christ, or the Vicar of Christ, or Melchizedek, or the King of Righteousness. It is July 26, 2025, which is equivalent to the Gregorian year 29 parts of the year is 2025, which is the Gregorian year, which is equivalent to the Berber year 2975. I greet your name by my Queen Sister Galveston from the House of Galveston, which is the name or surname we're going to dive in today, as well as our ancestors, our predecessors, our successors, our heirs, our descendants, and all those who are striving to get an understanding of what it is that we are here and called to do. Thank you for all who are going to be joining me here today on this marvelous topic. Jesus Christ poetically was an Atheling, Berber. Once again, Jesus Christ poetically, all right, was an Atheling, which was in fact were Berbers. Okay? So I don't know if you know what the word Atheling or the term Atheling mean. You probably know what the word Berber mean, but we're going to dive in and do a little bit of investigation. And we got a lot of ground to cover today. So if anyone's going to be joining me today, Please make yourself known if you can. If not, stay quiet. As with all lectures, classes, please have some type of decor. Like, share, subscribe, as well as offering common soapies is welcome. All right. This is a beautiful lesson. I hope that you like the past couple lessons that I did, as well as I just like the music that's portrayed by Fred Hammond. So I just pray that everyone is acceptable to it. It pretty much puts me on the level or in the spirit of what I need to be doing in regards to being the head of my sheep, the master of my flock. With that, we get started with this marvelous lecture. Hold on for 1 second. Let me just take care of a couple of things. How about that? Okay, let's get started. I'd just like to say before we get started that I know this information that I bring, it might be upsetting to a lot of people as a result of the impact that it might have on their lives. But nonetheless, I'm obligated to do such as a result of my last lecture that I did in regards to my office. Okay. So please understand that it's of the utmost importance that you put the biasness, the discriminatory, or the slander, or the rebellious to the side and just really deal with the facts of what's being presented to you in regards to the history that are that's being told to you, but there's no clarity in it. And I always say, time never was when we were not. It's a life of time begins, the time will come when we as the people will be no more. So it's my obligation to bring clarity to the people that choose to watch my platform. Okay? I can't make you stay here. It's your choice. All right. So with that, let's get started. The title of the lecture is Jesus Christ Poetically Was an Atheling or a Berber. We know when we say poet, poet means somebody who's gifted in speech, someone who's be able to elaborate in a manner which the normal individual can't pick up. All right. We know when one speaks in poetry, he speaks symbolically or metaphorically or theoretically. Okay, so these are some things that we need to consider in regards to in Jesus' ministry, because we know that Jesus spoke in a lot of parables. So a lot of things that we read abstract versus as a result of them being parables, we need to make them make sense, which is the alternative term, which we call concrete. Okay. So it's very important that you all stick with me because we're going to go and use the timeline in regards to the poetic uh, 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 status that Jesus had, which was nothing more than of a noble family, being born in a noble family, dealing with Jesus' bloodline. Whatever Jesus you should choose to pick, whether it's the one on my left hand side, the one in the middle, or the one on my right hand side, which I'm the reincarnation of, all right, are virtue of the fact that he was, in fact, the King of Peace. All right. And I look more similar to that individual on my right than a person on my left. I'll let you make that decision, Your Honor. Greetings, Salim Amoru Bey. Miraculous man. Thank you for joining me today. I got your message yesterday. If there's any questions, please ask them. I just ask that you have some decor. We always do or scrutinize those who come to our platform. Uh, I went to your platform the other day, so and I looked at some of the things that you're associated with. So once again, I understand the change. I understand the transition. I just ask that when you're here, that you speak with some decor. Any questions relative to the topic, please ask them. If it's not relative to the topic, please don't ask them. I'll try to clear it up as clerical as I can. But some answers might not be suitable for some people based upon what they're seeking. Okay, but I'll try my best to do the same. So once again, thank you for joining. All right, let's get started. The reason why I'm referring to English, whether you're talking Old English, Middle English, Early English, or Modern English, nonetheless, it's still English. That's what we speak. Okay. So I'm going to use the English translation to interpret what it is that we need to interpret because we are, based upon our understanding, English ancestors or English kindred or English descendants or English heirs. Okay. So very important to understand the word Atheling because the title of this lecture is Jesus Christ poetically was in fact a Atheling, which is a Berber descent. Okay. So let's define the word Atheling. Atheling, an Old English term denoting a nobleman or a prince, particularly one eligible for kingship, was also used in a poetic sense to describe a good and noble person. Pretty sure all of us are good and noble persons based upon our character. Old English verses, for example, often employed Atheling to refer to Christ as well as various prophets and saints. Okay? Meaning Christ-like. Very important to understand that, right? In the context of, of Anglo-Saxon culture, which were familiar with the royal succession and the concept of noble heirs, applying this term to Christ likely highlighted aspects of his divine authority, spiritual lineage, and perhaps even a foreshadowing of its kingship in a theological sense. Okay? This reason why we read the Bible, a lot of it is in parables, a lot of it is in symbolic, a lot of it is in metaphors, etc. All right? The concept of Christ's kingship is a significant aspect of Christian theology emphasizing his reign over a spiritual kingdom and his ultimate authority over that spiritual kingdom, as well as his physical kingdom. Because we have an abstract understanding and a concrete understanding based upon Jesus' life, okay? And the things he did, the things he spoke about, and the things he prophesied about, okay? Therefore, using Atheling to describe Christ in Old English verses likely conveyed the idea of a noble and divine figure, deserving of honor and respect and implicity connected to the notion of kingship within the Christian framework. That we must first grasp when we're talking about the term Christ, Jesus, Savior, the anointed, all meaning the same. Okay? All meaning the same.
Greetings, greetings, my people. We are here again today on another fabulous day. Me and the King's Bench. I am your king.
So I will hit that again. So we just defined Atheling, which is associated with nobility, and is also a term associated with Jesus Christ, denoting to his nobility, denoting to his associated with his family. Very important to understand that. So look at Atheling, all right, from another source. Right? Atheling is in English. Atheling. Okay. Let's look at another source. This is from Word Sense. Atheling in English alternative forms Atheling, or Atheling. Origin and history. From Middle English Atheling, from Old English Atheling, son of a king, man of royal blood, nobleman, chief, prince, king, Christ, God, man, hero, saint. From Proto-Germanic prince, nobleman, equivalent to Athel and ing, which means belonging to. All right, cognitive with the Old Frisian Etheling, Old Saxon Idling, Old High German Adeling, medieval Latin and delegates and delegates from Germanic. Very important to understand the meaning, the origin, and the spelling of the term Atheling, okay? Which can mean the same thing as Christ, okay? All right? Son of a king, man of royal blood, nobleman, chief, prince, king, Christ, God, man, hero, and saint, and any other synonymous term that you can associate it with, okay? Now let's go to Wikipedia and look at that as well. So we're talking about poetically that Christ, all right, was an athlete. Poetically, all right? He's, like I said, secretly, no one knew it, but he was of Atheling, of noble blood. Any questions, Brother Salim Amar Ube? Are there any questions? Atheling, also spelled Atheling, or Atheling, was a Old English term used in Anglo-Saxon England to designate prince of the royal dynasty who were eligible for kinship. Kingship, not kinship, but kingship. And the only way you can be kingship is you must be kindred. Okay? In order to be a king by royal succession through the process of primogeniture, you must be an heir of descent. Thank you. The term is an Old English and Old Saxon compound of athlete. So this is a race for us, a crusade, meaning noble family, which means belonging to. It was usually rendered the Latin as Philigus speakers, the king's son. We are all sons of the king. We are all heirs of the king. We are all kindreds of the king. We are all family. So therefore, we are kings. Okay? We are kings as well. Very important. During the early years of the Anglo-Saxon rule in England, the word Atheling was probably used to denote any person of noble birth. Its use was soon restricted to members of only the royal family. The prefix Apel formed part of the name of several Anglo-Saxon kings, for instance, Ethelbert of Kent, Ethelwulf of Wessex, Ethelred of Wessex, and was used to indicate their noble birth. Very important. Just for the unification of the barbarian tribes that were unified by Alfred the Great as a result of the Frankish king Charlemagne invading, conquering, and conquest of England. Very important. I'll start right here. From the ninth century, the term was used in much narrower context and came to refer exclusively to members of the house of the Cedrics of Wessex, the ruling dynasty of Wessex. That means all the kings that descended down from Alfred the Great to Edward the Confessor, the last English king. And when we say English, we're talking about Berber kings, okay? Because really there were no English kings till William the Conqueror invaded England. Prior to that, the only king in what you call England was Berber. So that means that the land of England was the land of the Berbers. I'm not saying that. I'll prove it in a second. According to historians, Richard Abel's King Alfred the Great, noble stone, Alfred the Great, which means wise elf, transformed the very principles of royal succession. Before Alfred, any nobleman who could claim royal descent, once again, before Alfred, any nobleman who could claim royal descent, no matter how distant, could strive for what? The English throne. That's called the founding of the office, or traversing the king's office, or inquisition of the king's office. This is my position. After him, throne worthiness would be limited to the sons and brothers of the reigning king. That means of the peerage. Okay? In the reign of Edward the Confessor, Edgar Atheling received the appellation of the grandson of Edmund Ironside. By that was at a time when, for the first time in 250 years, there was no living Atheling according to strict definition. Okay? So I'll go with this. Since many early Scandinavian kings were chosen by competition or election rather than primogeniture, the term may have been reserved for persons qualified to compete for kingship. So this is a race, all right, to be king, all right? Whether you're de jure or de facto, people want to be king, but don't have the right to be king based upon the process of what we call primogeniture. Okay, very important. Through the line of succession, agnatic succession. There were other variations as well. The term was occasionally used after the Norman conquest of England, and then only to designate members of that royal family. The Latinized dramatic form was used in the name of only legitimate sons and heirs of Henry I of England, son of William the Conqueror, and William Atheling, who drowned in the White Ship disaster in 1120. This is called the White Ship. This is called the White Ship. Let's move forward. And build my computer. Here we go. Right. This is Wikipedia. Atheling for the Almaru Bank. Atheling was also used in a poetic sense to mean a good and noble man. Right here. All right, right here. Atheling was also used in a poetic sense to mean a good and noble man. Old English versions often use Atheling to describe Christ as well as various prophets and saints. Very important. You have an abstract story and you have a concrete story. The abstract story is the Bible of the biblical events told by a Scottish king, King James, not of the English king. Because if you were if the story was told by the English kings, you would use English manuscripts. You would use English documentation to support the correlation between Atheling and Christ, poetically speaking. Okay, poetically speaking, we can do that. Let's see how. The books of Exeter. Right here. The history of the Exeter books. The Exeter books is generally acknowledged to be one of the greatest works of the English Benedictine revival of the 10th century. The Benedictine revival is the monastery revival from Roman Catholic influences on the Christian church. Okay? It happened in the 6th century when Pope Gregory I tried to convert the Anglo-Saxon Berbers to their type of Christianity. Okay? All right. And then it was reformed in the 10th century by not just the 10th century, the 8th, ninth, and the 10th century by Alfred the Great, Ashleton, Edmund I, Ethelred the Unready, and King Edgar the Peaceful, which were all family members of noble English peerage. The Exeter books is generally acknowledged to be one of the greatest works of English Benedictine revival of the 10th century. The precise date that it was written is compiled or unknown, although proposed date ranged from 960 to 990. The period saw a rise in monistic activity and productivity under the renewed influence of the Benedictine principles and the standards. At the opening of the period, Dunstan's importance to the church and to the English kingdom was establishing, establishing culminating in his appointment to Archbishop at Canterbury under Edgar of England, which is our Jesus Christ, which is our vicar of Christ, which I'm the reincarnation of, which is the person you see here on my right side. Okay, same person. That is King Edgar the Peaceful, or King Edgar the Peaceable, or King Edgar the Christ, and leading to the monistic reform by which the area was characterized. Dunstan died in 988, and by the period close, England under Ethelred, his son, faced an increasingly determined Scandinavian incursion to which whom would eventually succumb to. This is called the Danish Vikings, going back to what's his name, Swing Forkbear at the Battle of Hastings. We're going to talk about that in a second. All right. So you have to pay attention. All right. Some of the books that Exeter under what they call St. Dunstan were these books. Let's look at them. Christ 1, Christ 2, and Christ 3. All right. These are books concerning Atheling or concerning Christ or concerning the nobility of that individual that fit the description of Christ. That individual was none other than King Edgar the Christ, or King Edgar the Peaceful. And that year, I am the reincarnation every 1,000 years. And from 970 to 1970, that's 1,000 years. Okay, so these are some of the poetic books, or some of the poetic literature, or some of the poetic manuscripts that were preserved on the person that we identify in the concrete world as Jesus Christ. Okay, as a result of the Benedictine revival. That's what this is called. Let's look at that real quick, brothers and sisters. So this is our guideline. This is our blueprint. This is our record, okay, to follow. Very important. The English Benedictine reform, reform means to make like it originally was, or modernistic reform of the English church. We are called the Third Temple English Church of England. We had to reform it again as a result of the Roman Catholic influence through the time of what we call the Spanish conquest, the Spanish War of Spanish Succession, all right, as well as Queen Anne's War, because everyone is just copycatting of what took place as a result of what I'm teaching you here today. So the blueprint for all church body of politics, which you call the government, was established based upon the principles of the crown under the authority of the English church under the guidance of the king. Okay? In the mid-10th century, almost all monasteries were staffed by secular clergy who were often married. These are Roman Catholic monks, all right? The reformers sought to replace them with celibate contemplative monks following the rules of St. Benedictine. The movement was inspired by a continental, so it was a continental monastery reform. It was global. And leading figures like St. Dunstan, Archbishop Cadbury, Ethelwood, Bishop of Winchester, and Oswald, Archbishop of York, were some of the progenitors of it. All right? Very important. In the 7th and 8th century, England, most monasteries were Benedictine. Benedictine means school of black monks. Once again, the Benedictine monastery was called the School of Black Monks. Very important. But in the 9th century, learning in the monasticism declined severely. Who had to correct it? Alfred the Great. Alfred the Great unified all the Berber tribes at that time called barbarians, identified by other people who are trying to tell our story. And as I say, he who writes your books set your timeline. Time never was when we were not. As the life of time began by somebody else, the time will come when we will be no more. The Berbers have always been around. How I know it? I'm going to prove it. The court of Astral Stone, which means noble stone, the first king of whole unified England, called the Heptarchy, was a cosmopolitan. We talk about Astral Stone, was a cosmopolitan and the future reformer, such as St. Dunstan and Ethelwood, learned from the continental exponents of the Benedictine monasticism. The English movement became dominant under who? King Edgar, my brothers and sisters. So it became dominant. It became at its height. It became at its greatest influence at the time of King Edgar the Peaceful, the only king in all kings of any king that never had a war in his own reign, who supported the expulsion of secular clergy from the monastery and cathedral chapters and their replacement by celibate monks. The reformers had close relations with what? The crown of England, because these were English descendants. Very, very important. Why do I say that? Let's get a timeline. Because I said, who writes your books, set your timeline. Let's go to 1065. In the year 1065 AD, Annos Dominius, which means in the year of our Lord. Annos Dominius, which means in the year of our Lord. Look at all the corresponding calendars on this map. If you claim to be of a nation of people, you must have a timeline. Majority of the people who claim to be descendants from other nations, countries, using a different calendar because they're all using the Gregorian calendar, because if you wasn't, you would have a different year. Majority of the year that y'all go by is 2025. For us, it's the year 2975, okay? Which is equivalent to the Berber year, going back to the year 1 AD or 1 BC. At that time, it was the year 959 or not parts of 950 or 951. That was the time of King Edgar the Peaceful. When the world is matter of fact, I can do nothing. I got to show you. First of all, Berber calendar. The year 1065 in the Middle Ages is actually the year 2015 and the modern day for the Berbers. If you go to the year 1 AD or 1 BC, 1 AD or 1 BC. Let's look at that real quick before I move forward with this beautiful lesson. I bet you never had this explained to you, brother Amaru Bey. And this is in English, not in Arabic. It's not in Portuguese, not in Spanish, not in Latin. It's not in Italian. All right. They don't even have their own letter system. But we're respectful here. 1 BC. If you look at the corresponding calendars for 1 BC, BC, which means before Christianity. That's what they want you to believe, but it don't mean that for us. To us, it means the Berber calendar, because the only calendar, if we had to choose a calendar, because you don't see English calendar here, okay? There's no English calendar here on this calendar. You see a Berber calendar, and the year is 950 BC, okay? Which means Annos Domini, which means before Christianity, okay? According to majority of the people understand it. For us, it don't mean Christianity because Berbers were Christians. Okay, they were the Christian. All the correlating, you don't see any English calendar on this calendar. Nothing. The Hebrew calendar 3760, and that's the beginning of the world. That is the beginning of the world. So when the world is beginning, the Berbers are already here in the world. AD. All right, so that's 1 BC. Let's go to 1 AD. Annos Domini in the year of our Lord. Now the Lord's on earth. All right, some Lord is on earth in 1 AD. Let's just see. Give 1 BC, the year is actually 950 AD. Annos Dominius. All right, let me just get here. Right here, first century. Give me 1 AD. What's so hard about that? 1 BC. Where is 1 AD? 1 BC. Let me find it. See it. Put 1 AD. Probably that. I just want to give brothers and sisters a calendar. Okay? You need a calendar. I think I'll see in 1 second. Yes, sir. No, that's not it. 1 AD. That's how we do it. 1 AD. Let's see what we get here. Yes, sir. It makes sense, brother. It does make sense, brother Amaru Bey. All right, I'm pretty sure that name will be changed real soon. But for the sake of the argument, let's just bring more clarity to you. I need to get 1 AD. Why is it not showing for me? 1 second. Oh, I just seen it. I just seen it. Here we go. I hope that's it. 1 AD. Year 1 AD. Please don't do this. It's not giving me 1 AD. I'm just forgetting how to get there. I'll get there in a second. Let me just make work with zeros. Okay. Years. I don't know why it's doing this. It's just strange. It don't make no sense to me. All right, well, do it like this. If you go up 1 year, the year 1 BC will actually be 1 AD. All right. And it will be actually 951. Matter of fact, let's do this. Let's do this. I'm gonna find it. I'm not gonna leave it until I get it. All right. I'm not gonna leave it until I get it. Let's go back to 1066. 1065. Let's go there. Go right there. Back to 1065. Move to the 1 BC, but it's not doing it. But I'll stay here. Fine. If we went to 1 BC and it was only a Berber counter, okay, we up to 1066, and you still see a Berber counter, but there is no English reading out here. All right, everyone can surely see that. All right, there is no English reading out here. So if there's no English reading out here, then we know in fact that the only people that got a counter for the sake of the argument is the Berbers, because when you get to the English reading out here, you come here. English Greek now years, right? If we go to the year 1066, which is what we're going to do now. This is when William the Conqueror invaded England. 1066. William the Conqueror invaded England. Prior to that invasion, the only people that we can truly say were there were Berbers. Okay? So in the year 1066 now, when William the Conqueror is invading England, all of a sudden now an English year pops up, which is now what year? 1066. But in the Berber year, it's year 2016, so the year is going up. And 2015 is in 1065 AD, and the Berber year was 2015, and 1066 AD, and the Berber year was 2016. So our years is going up. All right, very important. But yet we got the English week now year, and it says the years of English and British monarchs are the official now years of the monarchs of the kingdom of not England, because we know England is can be construed as a result of this, the kings of Scotland sitting on the kingdom of England. And we know the kingdom of England was composed of Berbers who were living in England. And I'm going to qualify that right now in a second. So we see that according to the calendar, the renowned English and British monarchs, which are one and the same, are official renowned years of the monarchs of the kingdom of England from 1066 to May 1707, the Kingdom of Great Britain, and from May 1707 to January 1801, and in the United Kingdom since January 1801. So from 1066, 1707 to 1801, these are the official years of English slash Norman slash Frankish slash barbarian tribes. Okay, contrast to the original people living in those territories where you're talking about Britain, North America, Maghreb, Iberian Peninsula. All those people living there were in fact Berbers. Okay, they were Berbers. Let's qualify. Let's qualify. Let's go right back to Atheling. Let's go right back there. Because y'all need to realize y'all nobility, where it comes from. Where does this nobility come from? Okay, where does it stem from? Right now, it said it was an Old English used for Anglo-Saxon England to designate princes of royal dynasty who were eligible for kingship. The term meant noble family, meaning belonging to the noble family. That's very important. Then William Conquer invaded England, and guess what happened? They became noble within their family. How I know it's right here. Other variations. The term was occasionally used after the Norman conquest of England, and then only to designate members of the royal family. The Latinized dramatic form was used in the name of the only legitimate son and heir of Henry I of England, William Allen, who joined in the white ship, which caused the anarchy. Now, why is this important? Because we said Atheling and Christ were synonymous because it denoted to what? The noble family. Okay? Christ and Atheling denoted to the noble family. Okay? So let's look up the word Christ and family crest and Kosovo. Christ, history, family crest, and Kosovo. I'm talking about the surname, not what you wanted to mean, but the surname, the origin of where the name come from. The distinguished surname Christ is a proud sign of rich and ancient Austrian ancestry. Did you hear that? Austrian ancestry. When you're talking about Austrian, you're getting back into the old Byzantine Visigoth kingdom, which were tribes of Berbers, okay, on the Iberian Peninsula. Okay, these are Berbers. These are the descendants of Christ. Austria, which was originally home to the Celtic people, was conquered by the Roman Empire in about 15 BC. Following the fall of Rome, Austria was repeatedly invaded by barbarian tribes such as the Vandals, Visigoths, Huns, who swept from the east. Let's qualify that in the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. Let's qualify that. 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica on the term Berber. Berbers is the name under which are included various branches. Branches. Jesus said he was the vine. You're a branch on the vine. Okay? Very important. You are a vine, and you are Jesus, parts of Jesus the vine. You're a branch on that vine. And the fruit, which is the grapes, are a product of your offspring. Okay? It says Berber, the name under which are included various branches of indigenous Libyan race of North Africa. Since the dawn of history, the Berbers have occupied tracts between the Mediterranean and the Sahara from Egypt to the Atlantic. The origin of the name is doubtful. Some believe it was to be derived from the word barbarians, employed first by Greeks and then later by Romans. Others attribute the first use of the term for Arab conquerors. So a lot of people use the word Berber for a lack of understanding what the word Berber or the origin of the Berbers, where they come from. Okay, all right, very important. But we're gonna get it. We're gonna straighten that up right now. All right, I didn't write none of this poetic literature we're reading right now. Let's see. In spite of history of foreign conquest, the Phoenician, Greek, let me go up, one back up, up. The megalithic language of Iberia and Celtic Europe have their counterparts in northern Africa, and it suggested that these were all erected by who? The same race, by whatever name they be known. Berbers and Libyans in Africa, Iberians in Spain, and Celts, Gauls, and Picts in France and Britain. Did you hear what I just said? So the founders of the megalithic structures, where you're talking about Stone Age, or you're talking about pyramids, or you're talking about over in North America, dealing with the ziggurat temples, the what you call the built by the Olmecs. They were of the same race. These were Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Okay, the megalithic language of Iberia and Southern Europe have their counterparts in Northern Africa and suggest that they were all erected by the same race, by whatever name you want to call them. Whether they're Berbers in Libya and Africa, Iberians in Spain, Celts, Gauls, and Picts in France and Britain. And in spite of the history of foreign conquest, Phoenician, Greeks, Romans, Vandals, Arabs, and French. The Berber's physical type and the Berber's temperament and nationality have persisted since the Stone Age. Okay? Since the Stone Age. What else did they have to say about the Berbers? This fact has been emphasized by Dr. R.G. Latham, who writes, all that is not Arabic in the Kingdom of Morocco. All that is not Arabic in French province of Algeria. All that is not Arabic in Tunis, Tripoli, and Fetchin is Berber. The explanation lies in the profound distinction of character. The Arab is a herdsman and a nomad. The Berber is an agriculturist and a townsman. The Arab has built his social structure on the Quran, which inculcates absolutism, aristocracy, theocracy. The Berber, despite his nominal Mohammedanism ways, is a Democrat with his Jimnat Wittama and his Qanun written code, the Magna Carta of the individual liberties as opposed to the community's good. So the Wittaman or the Magna Carta are the laws, customs, and cultures of the Anglo-Saxon, and apparently what we're reading, they're saying they're Berbers. Okay? No matter where they're at, if they're in Iberia, if they're in Africa, if they're in Great Britain, as well as being in North America, we're going to always be Berbers. How I know it? Let's just check this out. Let's look at Berbers. Let's look at Berbers. Now, it just said the conquest and invasions were the Phoenician, Semitic speaking people identify with the ancient Canaanites. Okay, so there's a lot of people are calling themselves the ancient Canaanites. Okay, but not are cannot prove they are in fact the ancient Canaanites. Okay, we need a history for that, not just what the Bible told you, not just what you see on CNN, not on the History Channel. Okay, from historical records, you have to prove that you are in fact the ancient Canaanites from the Holy Land. Okay, you have to show the ancient conflicts that were fought on the Holy Land to actually identify as the Holy Land. Okay, very important. So it says here, for their part, the Phoenician Semitic speaking Canaanite came from perhaps the most advanced multicultural sphere then existing, the western coast of the Fertile Crescent region of West Asia. Accordingly, the material culture's Phoenician was likely more functional and efficient, and their knowledge more advanced than that of the early Berbers, which was a lie. I'm about to prove it. Hence, the interaction between Berbers and Phoenician were often asymmetrical. The Phoenicians worked to keep their cultural cohesion and ethnic solidarity and continuously refresh their close connection with Tyre and the mother city. Now, this is very important to understand when you're talking about the ancient Canaanites, okay? The ancient Canaanites are the holy people of God. So let's make the connection to the ancient Canaanite. The ancient Canaanite was called the Holy Land. Can anyone agree with that? The ancient Canaanite was in fact called the Holy Land. Okay, let's look at it. Holy Land. Let's look at it. Everybody want to come biblically and come theoretically, but no historical facts to justify their position. I'm going to show you how. It's going to be a hard one to top, y'all. Hard one to top. The Holy Land is used to collectively denote the areas of southern Levant. Everyone heard that. That holds great significance in the Abrahamic religion, primarily because of their association with people and events featured in the Bible. It is traditionally synonymous with what is known as the land of Israel, Zion, or the Promised Land, in a biblical religious context, or as Canaan or Palestine in a secular or geographical context, referring to a region that is mostly between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. Today, it chiefly overlaps with the combined territory of the modern states of Israel and Palestine, most notably among the religions that tie substantial spiritual value to the Holy Land are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Okay? Hope everyone understands that because we're really about to go in deep here. And we see the Holy Land is also called Canaan. Okay? It's also called Jerusalem. Okay? It's also called Levant. All right? Very, 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 very important. And southern Levant. Okay? In southern Levant. Look at it. Let's look at the kingdom of Jerusalem. The kingdom of Jerusalem, the land of Canaan, the Holy Land. All right? The kingdom of Jerusalem, also known as Crusader Kingdom, was one of the Crusader states established in Levant immediately after the First Crusade. It lasted for almost 200 years from the ascension of Godfrey of Bouillon, the son of Eustace II, okay, from the House of Flanders, in 1099 until the fall of Acres in 1291. Its history is divided to two periods with a brief interruption in its existence, beginning with its collapse after the siege of Jerusalem in 1187 and the restoration after the Third Crusade in 1192. Very, very, very important because this goes back into Jesus Christ being, based upon poetically speaking, a Atheling, okay, of noble birth, of noble family, part of the royal bloodline. You have to be in the bloodline. And apparently, those people who were protecting the kingdom of Jerusalem, the holy city, or the land of Canaan, called Southern Levant, all right, from protecting the land from somebody who was not supposed to be there. Can we agree with that? Okay? Can we agree with that? One's supposed to be there and one is not supposed to be there. All right? Very important. Now let's look up Levant. Levant is a sub-region of West Asia, the borders of Eastern Mediterranean Sea, and to the west forms the core of the Middle East. It is the narrow west sense which is used today in archaeology and other cultural contexts, and is equivalent to Cyprus and a stretch of land bordering the Mediterranean Sea and Western Asia. Okay, so you see Levant, you see the Holy Land, you see Jerusalem, all right, you see the land of Canaan. We are all talking about the same land. Okay, but we're not talking about the same exact events that took place on that land because most of those are abstract stories, abstract ideology. Okay, there is no historical validation to prove that these things actually existed. Okay, but from our record, it does. All right, how do we know that? Let's see. The Muslim conquest of the Holy Land, or the Muslim conquest of the Canaan, or the Muslim conquest of Levant, or the Muslim conquest of Jerusalem. However you want to say it makes no difference to me. Okay? Because wherever God's people are, or whatever Christ-like people are, then that means that they are Atheling because they are of the noble family. Okay? And apparently, Jerusalem was a result of the Muslim conquest of the Holy Land. Can everyone agree with me? Please give me a thumbs up in the chat line. If everyone agrees with me, please give me a thumbs up in the chat line. Please make yourself known. So we're back in 634 Christian era, the conquest of Byzantine Syria by Rashidun Khalifa of the Umayyad dynasty, who descended down from who? Muhammad. Okay? These were all part of the Arab Byzantine Wars. Okay? The Arab Byzantine Wars. How many of you know this history? All right? The Arab Byzantine Wars. We know apparently the Byzantine must be the Berbers. Because after you had the Muslim conquest of Levant, that led to the conquest of the Maghreb, which led to the conquest of what we call the Iberian Peninsula. Okay? A chain of events. All right? This you cannot dispute. So the Muslim conquest of Levant was a conquest of the Holy Land, Jerusalem, or the land of Canaan, going all the way back to the progenitors. Okay, very important. All right. Who was the belligerents? The Byzantine Empire. Okay. The Byzantine Empire. Now, a lot of people identify with the history of Africa and the history of the kings of Africa, but don't associate the kings with their family members and uh the I want to say that the objective of these people that we're talking about, such as Abu Bakr, Umar ibn al-Khattab, Ali ibn al-Walid, Abu Abudah ibn al-Jarrah, Amir ibn al-Allah. All these were commanders and leaders of armies of war. Okay? And they were the ones who started the war because they were conquering land that did not belong to them. Okay? This was the Muslim conquest of Levant, not the reconquest of Levant, but the conquest of Levant. This is very important to comprehend because this led to the conquest of what? The Iberian Peninsula. Okay? I mean, the Maghreb. All right. So we see that belligerence in this conflict in Levant was the Byzantine Empire. And we know they must control Levant, right? Versus those who immigrated to that particular territory known as Levant, all right, which was Rashidun Khalifa, successor of the Umayyad dynasty. This led to the Muslim conquest of the Maghreb with the same person, Rashidun the Khalifa. Right here. Against who? The same Byzantine Empire. Okay, and this is in 647 to 709 AD. All right, this is on Maghreb. This is what we call North Africa, not in Asia, not in Arabia, but in North Africa, my brothers and sisters. Rashidun Khalifa and Umayyad Khalifa, all going back to Muhammad. Okay, all going back to Muhammad. Byzantine Empire, which and are down with the Austrians, and we know Christ is a term that originated in Austria. Okay, so the Byzantine Empire was composed of the Kingdom of Altaba, which was Berber Christian Berbers, Kingdom of Oris, Christian Berbers, Kabyle Confederation, Berbers, Kingdom of Khorasan, Berbers, Kingdom of Hunda, Berbers, and other various Berber tribes and stateless known as the Visigoth Kingdom. Okay? Known as the Visigoth Kingdom, and there were conquests, reconquests, all right? All this led to the Castilian reconquest, Castilian Civil War, the Castilian War of Succession, the Spanish conquest, the Spanish succession, the Age of Discovery. All this is preeminent of what I'm talking about today. Okay? Very important. So after the invasion by the Muslims of the Holy Land or the Levant or Canaan or Jerusalem, okay, all right, after that invasion, they took their chance on and moved over into what we call the Iberian Peninsula, right, which is called the Muslim conquest, the Maghreb, okay. Now, after they conquered that, they changed it from the Maghreb to something else, okay? And then after that, they went on right over to what? The conquer of the Iberian Peninsula. Yeah. Are you still, brother? Shalom Amaru Bey? You still with us, brother? Muslim conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. Are you still with us, brother Amaru Bey? All right, that's good, brother. Glad you're here with us. All right, the Muslim conquest. We already see the Muslim conquest, the Levant, or what we call Jerusalem, or what we call the Holy Land, or what we call Canaan. All right. Now we're seeing that from that it went on to what we call the Maghreb, okay, which is what we call North Africa, okay, which we know that's where the Berbers originated from. From there, they went on to what they call the Muslim conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. All right. First, let's look at the conquest of the Maghreb. Did we do that yet? Muslim conquest of the Maghreb. Yeah, we did do that. Let me just go back to one more time. So Muslim conquest of the Maghreb, which was the Byzantine Empire, very important, versus the same individual, Rashidun Khalifa, who conquered Levant. Okay, and Crusades, all the Crusades, there were nine, if I'm not mistaken, nine Crusades. All right, starting in 1096. All right, all involving English, Spanish, and French Crusaders. Okay, very important. All right. So we see the Iberian Maghreb was invaded by aliens. All right. Rashidun Khalifa and Umayyad Khalifa invaded the Byzantine Empire. We know Empire of Byzantine was composed of Berber tribes, as you can see here, also identified as the Visigoth kingdoms. Okay. Now, from then, it went on to what we call the Iberian Peninsula. Let's review that. The Muslim conquest of the Iberian Peninsula, also known as the Arab conquest of Spain, was a Umayyad conquest of the Visigoth kingdom of Hispania. So the Byzantine Empire and the Visigoth kingdom of Hispania was the original inhabitants of that landmass before it was invaded by Muslims. Okay, the conquest resulted in the end of what Christian rule in most of Iberia and established a Muslim Arab Moorish rule in the territory that came to be known as Al Andalus under the Umayyad dynasty. This is very important to understand the transition in time. Okay? Very important to understand the transition in time. Why? Because this all goes back to, or this is all going to be succeeded by events that we're not aware of. Okay? How about know it? Who are the belligerents? The Umayyad Khalifa and the Visigoth kingdoms and the kingdom of Austria. Did you hear that? The Visigoth kingdoms and the kingdom of Austria. Now, we just said that the word Christ is from Austria. The word Christ is from Austria. Distinguished surname, Christ is a proud sign of rich and ancient Austrian ancestry. Austria was originally home to Celtic people, which was conquered by the Roman Empire in about the 15th century BC. Now, when we go back to the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, it clears us up of the original people that were there prior to the Celtics. All right? Prior to the Celtics. Okay, Berbers and Libyans in Africa, Iberian in Spain, Celts and Gauls and Picts in France and Britain. So these are all the same people, in spite of the foreign conquest by Phoenician, Greeks, Romans, Vandals, Arabs, and French. Okay, so it's very important to understand the heritage here. Okay, or who we claim to be. This is what we're going to talk about now. Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely right. Uh, uh, Brother Murphy from the House of Murphy. You're absolutely right. Okay, so let's look at it now. Let's go a little deeper now. Should be on the same page. All right, let's go a little deeper. I think I can go a little deeper, right? Let's go here. the peerage of Great Britain started in 1707. Okay, so that's not our family now. Okay, the peerage of Great Britain comprised of all extended peerages created in the Kingdom of Great Britain between the Acts of Union of 1707 and the Acts of Union of 1801. It replaced the peerage of England and the peerages of Scotland, they had their own peerages. Very important. We're not concerned about Scotland, but we are concerned about England. What is the peerages of England? So Scotland and Ireland is out the equation because they're started with 1707 and after. The peerage of England comprised of all peerages created in the Kingdom of England before the Acts of Union of 1707. So that meant that anything before was the peerages of England. Even though it might have been composed of different houses, it was still the peerages of England because it was acting on behalf of the crown of England. Why is this important? I'm about to show you. This brings up the question, the peerages of France. Very important. The peerages of France, which is the peerages of Great Britain, which is from 1707 and after. The peerages of England, which was before 1707. Let's deal with the peerages of France. Okay? All right, to see if we're connected to this peerage family. Okay? This noble family. All right? The peerage of France was a hereditary distinction with the French nobility, which appeared in 1180 during the Middle Ages. Okay? 1180. So it precedes France, Great Britain, but it don't precede England, okay? Because it was periods of England was there before 1707. Now we're dealing with France, so we got to put France on the map. Let's see, the peerage of France. All right. Under the monarchy, feudal peerages in ancient regime, medieval French kings conferred the dignity of peerages on some of the preeminent vassals, both clerical and lay. Some historians consider Louis VIII, Seventh, all right, to have created the French system of peers. I repeat, Louis VII created the French system of peers. Very important. All right, Louis VII, I repeat, created the French system of peers. Why is this important? Because we have to go back into what we call the first 100-year wars. Okay? The first 100-year wars. Let's revisit that. Since Louis VII created French peerage, all right, which is the houses and titles of nobility that are granted to the kindred of the rim. All right, very important. Let's go to the first 100-year war. Clear the story up. Look at the commanders and leaders of the first 100-year war, identifying with the peerage of those who are of the nobility. And of England, they were called Atheling, okay, belonging to the noble family. All right. So we're looking at the first 100-year war, not the 100-year war in the War of the Roses, but the first 100-year war. And the parties involved in it is what? The Kingdom of France and the Kingdom of England. Okay, involving the estates of France and England. Okay, and when we say estates, we're talking about land, fiefs. All right. So the commanders are Louis VII of France, the founder of the French peerage, Philip II of Augustus, and Louis VIII of France, who fought in the Albigensian Crusade, which is the crusade that preceded the regular crusades, okay, in 1096 and 1099, okay? St. Louis, Raymond V, Raymond VI, Theobald, and all the rest of the people, contrast to Henry II of England, Richard Lionheart, John Lackman, Henry III. All these are descendants of Godfrey the Fifth Caliban Jew, son of God, ruler of Jerusalem, and the first 100-Year War, who were all of English peerage. You hear what I said? Of English peerage. Because Godfrey the Fifth Caliban Jew married Matilda, the daughter of Margaret of Scotland. Okay, Matilda of Scotland. Matilda of Scotland, who was the daughter of Margaret of Scotland, who was married to Malcolm III, a Scottish king. So we see the two commanders and leaders and the belligerents in the war, called the First 100-Year War, was Louis VII, one who created the period for what we call the French kings or Frankish kings, okay, versus the peerages of England, which was established by the kings of Wessex. All right, the kings of Wessex were not on in France or Spain, because Louis VII, Philip II of August, Louis VIII of France are associated with the French houses. Okay, Henry II, Richard the Lionheart, and John Lackland, and Henry III are associated with the England and the Plantagenet, which is also French houses. Okay, very important. All right, so Louis VII, Philip II of August, and Louis VIII of France versus Henry II, Richard Lionheart, and John Lackland. Now, this is very important to understand to see who are of the Atheling or noble blood of what we call the Jesus Christ. For that, you need to know the history of Jesus Christ, i.e., his progeny. Let's look at that real quick. Jesus bloodline. Let's look at it. Jesus bloodline. Specifically, they claim the Saint Grail or medieval lore did not represent the Saint Grail or Holy Grail, the cup drunk from at the Last Supper. But both vessels of Mary Magdalene's womb and the Saint Grail, the blood royal of Jesus represented, and the lineage descended from them. Okay? So that symbolic or the abstract story is not going to fit the script. You need to understand that they were talking about blood, descendancy, ancestry, okay? The blood royal of Jesus, i.e., the Atheling, okay? Because Atheling is of royal nobility. Christ was of royal nobility. Jesus was Christ, which means he was the one who would be anointed. The blood royal of Jesus represented in lineage descended from them. And their reconstruction, Mary Magdalene goes to France after the crucifixion, carrying a child by Jesus who would originate a lineage that centuries later would unite with the Merovingian rulers of the early Frankish kingdoms, from whom they have traced their descendants into medieval dynasties that were almost exterminated by the Albigensian Crusade. Hold that thought. Okay. So it says, Mary Magdalene goes to France after crucifixion, carrying a child. Jesus, who would originate a lineage that century later would unite. They wasn't united, but would unite with the Merovingian rulers of the early Frankish kingdom. Okay, this is a lie. They was not supposed to unite with the Frankish kingdoms who descended from the Merovingian dynasty. All right, it was not supposed to unite, but this is the secrecy that will cause as a result of the Crusader states of the Kingdom of Jerusalem that was started by Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou, son of Folk. Apart so that the Albigensian Crusade, which was crusade that descended down from the prior crusade, started in 1096, which was started with Godfrey of Bouillon. Okay, start with Godfrey of Bouillon. That's when all the stuff started because they were trying to leak Jesus' true bloodline with the bloodlines of the Merovingian rulers, which were Frankish kings and not French and English and Spanish kings, all tied up as a result of the royal blood. All right, let's get it. Who is the Merovingian dynasty? Let's see if this is Jesus' bloodline. The dynastic name medieval land, Latin Merovingi or Merovingi, son of Merovec, and you can go back to the movie uh Matrix, okay? You can see the movie Matrix. The dynastic name medieval Latin derived from the unattested Frankish form akin to the attested Old English Merowing, with the final ing, hence the word Atheling and Merowing, two family lines. Once again, Merowing belonging to the Merovic family or belonging to the Atheling family. Okay, you got to choose. Okay, with the final E belonging to a typical Germanic patronymic suffix. The name derives from Selling King Merovec, who is at the center of many legends. Unlike the Anglo-Saxon royal genealogies, the Merovingians never claimed to descend from God, nor is there any evidence that were regarded as sacred. So how in the hell can the Merovingians link up with the royal bloodline of Jesus if they never said that they were linked to God like the royal houses of genealogy? Does that make sense to anybody? Does that make sense to anybody? That's very important to understand. How could the Merovingians claim to be descended from God like the Anglo-Saxons? Because the Anglo-Saxons were the ones who were Christ-like. Because Atheling means belonging to, and we know Christ, it means are associated with Atheling as though of being of the noble family. Okay? Very, very important for you to understand that, right? Now, this brings us to hair. All right? This brings us to hair. The battle, let's go here. Crusades. All right? And in lieu of what we already just said in this lecture, okay, brothers and sisters, going all the way back to the conquest of Levant, the conquest of the Iberian Peninsula, the conquest of the Maghreb, and the conquest of the Iberian Peninsula, which was composed of nothing but Berber tribes. We take that conquest from Levant, all right, or Canaan, all right, or the Holy Land, Jerusalem, and we take that all the way up to the 1096 during the time of the Crusades, all right, which was a result of trying to reclaim Jerusalem, the Holy Land, Canaan, Levant, from those who conquered it, which was who? The Muslims, the Arabs, and which they said in the 19th Encyclopedia Britannica, though we have Mohammedanism ways, our democracy or our democratic government was called Wittenmark. That was the government of the Anglo-Saxon, okay? So the Crusades were a series of religious wars initiated, supported at a time directed by the papacy during the Middle Ages. The most prominent of these were the campaigns to the Holy Land aimed at reclaiming Jerusalem and its surrounding territory from the Muslim rule. So if that's the case, they're going all the way back to the conquest of Levant. Okay, they're going all the way back to the conquest of Levant in the 7th century, and now they're all the way in the 11th century fighting the same fight. Okay, very important. So who is this family? Are constantly fighting to restore, to reclaim, to re-inhabit their own land. Who is this royal family? It ain't the Merovingians, all right? It got to be the Atheling, okay? And if you're looking for a Christ, it has to come through that family, okay? Very important. Let's see. Crusades. Crusade. You're right. Other church-sanctioned campaigns include crusades against Christians not obeying papal ruling and heretics, those against the Ottoman Empire, and one for political reasons. The struggle against the Moors in the Iberian Peninsula Reconquista ended in 1492 with the fall of Grenada. From 1147, Northern Crusaders were fought again against pagan tribes in Northern Europe. Crusades against Christians began with the Albigensian Crusade, and in the 13th century, it continued through the Hussite Wars and the early 5th century. Crusades against the Ottomans began in the late 14th century, including Crusades of Varna, popular crusades, including children crusades of 1212, which were generated by the masses and were unsanctioned by the church. So you had a lot of crusades. Main one we're talking about is the one going back all the way to the original crusade in 1096. Why is this important? Because it was all involving restoring the kingdom of Jerusalem. The kingdom of Jerusalem. What is the kingdom of Jerusalem? Let's look at that again. The kingdom of Jerusalem, also known as the Crusader Kingdom, was one of the Crusader states established in Levant, immediately after the first crusade. Once again, immediately after the first crusade, and lasts for almost 200 years, and from the ascension of Godfrey of Bouillon in 1099 until the fall of Acres in 1291. Its history is divided into two periods with a brief interruption in existence, beginning with collapse after the siege of Jerusalem in 1187 and restoration of the Third Crusade. That's very important because the first king of the kingdom of Jerusalem is Godfrey. Okay? It's Godfrey. Let's see that. How many of you brothers and sisters know this? You have to. And Godfrey is key. Godfrey, Jefferson, same name. Godfrey of Bouillon was a preeminent leader of the First Crusade and the first ruler of the Kingdom of Jerusalem from 1099 to 1100 AD. Although initially reluctant to take the title king, he agreed to rule as prince under the title advocate of the Holy Sepulchre. He was the second son of Eustace of Count of Boulogne, which was from the house of Flanders. So the first king of Jerusalem, in spite of all the conflict that we had in Jerusalem, going all the way back to Canaan, which is Jerusalem, he was the first protector or the one to protecting and advocating for the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Okay? The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in 1099. Very important to understand that. All right. Why is it important to understand that? Because of his father. Okay. His father. Why? Let's see. Who is his father? Eustace of Boulogne. The keys, brothers and sisters. I'm giving you. All of these keys. Ilse II was a long, Ilse with long mustache was a count of Boulogne from 1049 to 1087. He fought on the Norman side at the end at the Battle of Hastings. Very important. Battle of Hastings. This was the end of Jerusalem for us, brothers and sisters. This was the end of the kingdom of Jerusalem. All right? Very important. And then it fell into the hands of the Frankish kings who instituted a false sense of the kingdom of Jerusalem. Ilse II, who fought for the Norman side of Battle of Hastings, was the father of Godfrey Bouillon, the first king of the kingdom of Jerusalem. Okay, where all the movies you see involving the First Crusade, Second Crusade, Third Crusade, Fourth Crusade, Fifth Crusade, 7, 8, and 9. All these crusades stemmed from this guy's Godfrey Bouillon's father, Eustace II. All right. He was one of the field improvement companions of William the Conqueror. We know prior to William the Conqueror, the only kings in England were Berber kings because William the Conqueror brought in the English region here in 1066. He is one of the field-proven companions of William the Conqueror and has been suggested that Eustace was a patron of the Beatrix tapestry. His second son, Godfrey Bouillon, was preeminent leader of the First Crusade and the first ruler of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And the crusade was all about reconquering, reclaiming, conquest of Levant, Jerusalem, the land of Canaan. Okay? That's what that was all about. Let's see. Ilsen was the son of Ilse I of Bologna. Ilse's wife was Goda, the sister of King Edward the Confessor. Did you hear that? Ilse's wife was Goda, the sister of King Edward the Confessor, the last king at the time of the Battle of Hastings. The Battle of Hastings was with William the Conqueror, who was assisted by Eustace II, the father of Godfrey of Bouillon, the founder of the Crusades, who fought to restore the kingdom of Jerusalem, going back to the conquering of Jerusalem at that time when it was called the land of Canaan. Okay, so Edward the Confessor, sister, married Eustace. All right, her name was Goda, or God gift you, or God's gift. Okay, she was the daughter of King Ethelred the Unready, the son of Jesus Christ, or King Edgar the Peaceful. My brothers and sisters, we must understand what's going on. So Eustace's wife was Goda. Let's look at Goda. Was Goda. Goda of England, or God Gifu, or Godi, was the daughter of King Ethelred the Unready and his second wife, Emma of Normandy, and sister of King Edward the Confessor. She married firstly Drogo of Mantes, Count of Vexin, probably on the 7th of April 2024, etc. All right. So her father was Edward Ethelred the Unready, which means ill-advised. Okay. Very important because this takes us to what? The Battle of Hastings. In closing, what is the Battle of Hastings? I think I pulled that up. Battle of Hastings. In closing. All right. So Eustace II, the father of Godfrey of Bouillon, the king of Jerusalem in 1090 in 1096, 1099. Okay. He didn't wear a crown. He was there to protect the king of Jerusalem. So who is the king of Jerusalem that he was protecting in response to the Holy Sepulchre? We know that Jesus' mission years was in France, okay? And it said that he was supposed to unite with the Merovingian dynasty, but I find it hard to believe that if they did not descend down from God, like the Anglo-Saxons which was those who were of the Atheling nobility, i.e., part of that noble family. So let's go to the Battle of Hastings to see if we can get some clarity in this. Battle of Hastings. The Battle of Hastings was fought on the 14th October 1066 between the Norman French army of William, Duke of Normandy, and the English army under Anglo-Saxon King Harold Godwinson, beginning the Norman conquest of England. All right. This is called the Battle of Hastings. All right. That's very important. Who are the belligerents? For the Norman side, William the Conqueror and Eustace, Count of Boulogne, the father of Godfrey of Bouillon, versus Harold Godwinson, a Danish king, okay, who succeeded Edward to confessor. This is very important in regards to why it switched to what we call the Plantagenet crown, okay, under Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou, okay, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem, and we'll close on that. Let's go right here. Heritage of France. Now we know the first 100-Year War was and involved Louis VII and Louis VIII, and we know that that was the French against the English, okay? And the English kings were French kings, okay? The English kings were French kings. Let's prove that real quick. The first 100-Year War. Henry II was the son of Godfrey, the fifth commander, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem. These were his sons, Richard, John, Henry III. His sons was Edward I, Edward II, and Edward III, which is when you get to the 100-Year War and the War of the Roses, okay, which are different conflicts, all right? But in regards to the origin of the Plantagenet dynasty, they were started by Henry II's father, Godfrey, the fifth kind of Anjou, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem. Let's look at that real quick before I close out. His father was Godfrey, Plantagenet, Count of Anjou. His mother was Empress Matilda. All right, once again, Godfrey the fifth Count of Anjou. Mother was wife was Empress Matilda, who was the mother of Henry II, King of England. Now, who was Empress Matilda? This is about to get you there. Watch where I go with this. Going to go right back to the King of Wessex. So we have English, French kings who descended down from the English king, going all the way back to Margaret of Wessex or Margaret of Scotland. Let's prove it. Empress Matilda or Empress Maud, mother was who? Matilda of Scotland and Henry I, who was the son of William the Conqueror, who invaded England. So Matilda of Scotland was the mother of Empress Matilda, who married Godfrey the fifth Count of Anjou, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem, which was the last kings of the kingdoms of Jerusalem during the Crusade War when Saladin surrendered. When the kingdom of Jerusalem was surrendered to Saladin, Kerat Castle. Okay, just like the movie Betrayed. Who is Matilda of Scotland? She was the daughter of Margaret of Scotland. Let's prove it. Daughter of King Malcolm III of Scotland and Anglo-Saxon Prince Margaret of Wessex. Let's click her. Margaret of Scotland. Saint Margaret of Scotland, also known as Margaret of Wessex, was Queen of Alba. It used to be called Albion, but as a result of her marriage to a Scottish king, became Alba. All right. As the wife of King Malcolm III, Margaret was sometimes called the Pearl of Scotland. You hear that? Did you hear that? brothers and sisters. She was, in fact, a Christian. She was from the house of Wessex. Okay, so with that, that brings me right back here to the peerages of France, which I'll close out. The peerages of France versus the peerages of Britain versus the peerages of England are is unified with England and not Scotland. Okay, the peerages of France is linked to the peerages of England as a result of marriage. Okay, marriage. Let's prove it. The Constitutional period first became important in World War II for the court that would try King John of England and his capacity as vassal of the French crown. Based on the principles of trial by peers, a court wishes to acquire jurisdiction over John had to include persons deemed to be of equal rank to him in his capacity as either Duke of Aquitaine or Normandy. None of these peers have been specified, but since John's trial required the presence of the peers of France, it can be said that the first two peerages identifiable in the document will be the Duchess of Aquitaine and that of Normandy. Let's go back a little further. The 12 peerages, also known as the ancient peerage, and the number 12 is sometimes said to have been chosen to mirror the 12 paladins of Charlemagne and the Chancellor de Guest. Parallel may also be seen with the mythical Knights of the Round Table under the King Arthur, as well as the 12 disciples of Jesus. Okay, very important. The 12 disciples. How I know it? You find that right here. Period in Jerusalem. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, the only Crusader state equal in rank to such European kingdom as France, the origin of most of Jerusalemites in England, had a peerage model on the French using the French language. Okay, very important. So they are one and the same as a result of the marriage of the family. I'm about to qualify that in a second. The number of the period is the thought to parallel the 12 apostles. Once again, the 12 apostles. This is very important for us to understand. Okay? Very important to understand. So, with that, I need to go right back here. United States versus one came out. I'm going to come here again. This is the United States Supreme Court in regards to the citizenship clause of all those who are emancipated from the 13th Amendment to the 14th Amendment. For all national purposes, embraced the Constitution, embracing the Constitution became one, united under the same sovereign authority and governed by the same laws. But they retained their jurisdiction over all persons and things within their territorial limits, except which were surrendered to the general government or restrained by the Constitution and protected to life and protection to life, liberty, and property rested primarily with them. So far as the just commune or folk right related to the rights of persons was concerned, the colonies regarded it as their birthright and adopted such parts as they could be found applicable to their condition. So as a result of that, you have lost your estate. What is folk right? Let's look up folk right. And I'll close out. One more. Anglo-Saxon land law. Two more stops, and then we'll be finished. Bear with me. Anglo-Saxon land law. Okay. Now, the founding fathers are not Anglo-Saxon, but yet they took the folk right of the Anglo-Saxon for their own. If you don't take it back, then hey, find its keepers, losers, reapers. Come on. Anglo-Saxon law, decree or judgment. Was the legal system of Anglo-Saxon law was the legal system of Anglo-Saxon England from the 6th century until the Norman conquest of 1066. Once again, Anglo-Saxon law was the legal system of Anglo-Saxon England from the 6th century until the Norman conquest. So prior to 1066, the only Anglo-Saxon law, decreed, and judgment was those of Berbers, okay? Because the government in 1065 was composed of Berbers going all the way back to the Anglo-Saxon throughout their history. It was also a form of dramatic law based upon unwritten custom known as folk right and on written laws enacted by kings with the advice of their written or council. Written was called written mind. Let's look that up. Written, wise men, was the king's council in the Anglo-Saxon government of England from before the 7th century until the 11th century. It comprised of important noblemen, including aldermen, thanes, bishops. Meetings of the written were sometimes called written mind. So if that is in fact the case, okay, if that is in fact the case that the government was called Wittenmont of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, then according to the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, we are in fact those same people. Okay? We are in fact those same people because it said that Wittenmont belongs to who? The Berbers. The Arab has built his social structure on the Quran with inculcate absolutism, aristocracy, theocracy. The Berber, despite his nominal Mohammedanism, is a Democrat with his Jimna or Wittenmont, the Qanun or unwritten code called the Magna Carta of the individual's liberty as opposed to the community's good. All right? It's right there. So if you are of nobility, my brothers and sisters, and that you are of English parentage, the only way that can be restored upon you is by understanding the fount of honor and from which it originated from. Okay? And that simply means the fount of honor is a person whom, by virtue of their official position, has the exclusive right of conferring legitimate titles of nobility and orders of chivalry on other persons. Okay? Very important. And that as a result of the land that was conveyed to you through feudalism, through the process of civilization that was created in violation of Queen of Pretorius. All right? Very important. So with that, I think I said enough. I'm going to stop and share my screen. I'm going to open the floor for questions for those who have questions. Right? Are there any questions? Please ask them now. Are there any questions? Are there any questions, Brother Amaru Bey? Are there any questions that I can answer for you? Any questions that I can answer for anyone? Speak now, forever hold your peace. So somebody got a question. Once again, like, share, subscribe, as well as donate free and common focus to $ Clifford Jefferson L or the Third Supreme Church of England, as well as promote. If anybody out there got a platform that would like to greet and meet with the King, please let me know in the chat line, as well as uh, uh, pass the information on to uh, anybody else that's deserving of it. Yes, the Phoenician and Berbers mix. Let's just go right back here. 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. And the reason why I use this Encyclopedia Britannica because it was created in Edinburgh, Scotland. In Edinburgh, Scotland. Okay. Your question is, did the Phoenician and Berbers mix? In spite of the history of foreign conquest, in spite of the history of foreign conquest, Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans, Vandals, Arabs, and French, the Berber physical type and the Berber temperaments and nationality have persisted since the Stone Age. So yes, they did amalgamate, they did mix, but they still maintain their identity. Okay, they still maintain their identity by a result of the national standard. See, a lot of people have an identity, but the identity is not based upon national standards because the national standard is based upon a nation. A nation represents a body of politics, and a body of politics denotes to activity, all right? Political principles that are fundamental to all those who make up that society, okay? Very important. Very important. To answer your question, Brother Amoru Bey. Any more questions? Brother Salim Amaru Bey, you need to, if it's in your will, to pass the information on to the brothers and sisters on your website and your posts on Miraculous Man. That would be a good thing. Yes. Like, did you receive everything you needed to hear today, Brother Salim Amaru Bey, since your last correspondence with me in the text? And did you like what was presented today in lieu of clarity? Yes, you are the children. You are the direct descendants of the person identified as Jesus. This is Jesus to us. The word Edgar means rich in spirits, spirit-sided. King Edgar the peaceful. Edgar means rich in spirits. I'm read the last phrase before I leave out to answer your question. Right here. Same person. This is Jesus Christ, or the Christ, standing on the exchequer, okay, the checkerboard. Very important. And listen to the command of Jesus. These were the instructions left until his reincarnation in myself. Reincarnation means incorporation, all right, or impersonating. That's what reincarnation means to us. To incorporate the acts of King Edgar, which was our Christ. You see this? This is King Edgar, a charter. This is Jesus Christ. All right. The Christ-like or the anointing of the position that King Edgar took. This is called the finding of office, flanked by Mary and St. Peter. Okay. This is very important. Let me just read a quote from here. From Peter, the Winchester New Minister's Charter of the only illuminated charter and the only manuscript written entirely in gold to survive from Anglo-Saxon England. Edgar is flanked by the Virgin Mary and St. Peter, and he's offered the charter of Christ, who sits enthroned and above, surrounded by four winged angels. Okay, this is the charter. Okay, as you can see, the book is closed. All right. The book is closed. When you go to New Minister's Charter, let's look at it. New Minister's Charter. This is what it is. The book is closed. You ever heard of the Book of Life? It's called the Berber. The Book of Life. And I'm going to close on this. You ain't in this Book of Life? That's why Christ is not just for Jesus Christ, for all saints. You got to be written in that Book of Life. What life book we talking about? Let's see. Here we go. Look at the book, brother Amoro. The book is open. The book ain't closed. Now the book is open. And you see Peter and Mary flanked with Jesus. But in the other picture, you don't see, you see King Edgar taking a position as if he was sitting on the throne. Okay, this is called enthronement. All right, very important. New Minister Le Berber is a confraternity book produced in Winchester in the southern England in 1031. It records the name of visitors to New Minister Winchester and contains other information too, as well as the contemporary images of King Canute the Great, one of the Danish kings, and the second wife of Queen Emma on Normandy. It also contains other saints, all right? One for the later writers had added the name of King Edward the Confessor, Queen Edith, and Atheling Edgar. Atheling. You hear that? Atheling of the noble family. He didn't physically write it in the book. It's consciously written in the book because we are beings of consciousness. Consciousness. What is a confraternity book? Let's read that real quick before we close it out. An abstract book and a abstract story and a concrete story. Talking about the book of Revelations, it's what we're talking about. Confraternity book, also called the Liber Memorialis or Memorial Book or the Liber Vitae Book of Life. You hear that? Book of Life is a medieval register of the names of people who had entered into a state of spiritual brotherhood, confraternity, with a church or monastery in the same way, often by visiting in the capacity of a pilgrimage or a crusade or a journey, whatever you want to call it. So no matter where you at on this planet Earth, consciously, which we call spiritually, we are in the same state. Okay? We are in the same state of consciousness, not confined to the body, which is composed of what we call mass matter or volume. Okay? We're composed of something more composed of than what the fleshy eyes can see. It's called ether, like um, uh, brother Murphy said. Ether, airs, etheric beings, the Ethiopians. Okay, very important. So did that answer your question, brother Amor Bay? It's going to take some time, brother. But the first thing you must identify before you do anything is your allegiance. Okay? It's better for you to not know this information than to know this information and not follow it because you will be judged accordingly. Okay? So things don't happen just by chance. You didn't stumble on this information that not by chance. Okay? So it's very important, Brother Amaru Bey, Salim to you, which means peace. All right? To go back into your surname. Let's look that up. Surname. What is your surname? While we at it, what's your surname, brother? Identified as Amaru Bey. What is the paternal name that your father gave to you? Let me know before we close out. What's your surname? No, Lee said, don't throw away your European name. They're going to have to pay back in compound interest by what they did to us during the time of slavery. What's your surname, brother? In many societies, surname, family name, or last name is the most hereditary portion of one's personal name that indicates one's family. Grant, that's what I'm talking about. I like that. My brother didn't say Grant. He said the house of Grant. Let's look at that up. Check it out. House of Grant. Scotland and Ireland. Grant, history, family crest, coats of arms. Stand fast, noble. Hear that? Despite claims to the contrary, there is evidence that the surname claims descent from the grants or grants of Grants Court of Saint Michael de Treport and were the accounts of you, recognizing that the Norman history does not necessarily conflict in remembering that Normans were overrun by Vikings in the 9th century, and the name Grant is still correctly interpreted as the Norman Grand, meaning big or eminent. All right, brother? William the Conqueror followed the English laws, even though he invaded England. Okay? He married into the family. Okay? So you are royal blood, noble. Royal blood. Recognize that, make the corrections in the family line in regards to the history of the family line that you didn't know. Knowing your family line corrects the error of your family line and the conditions that people with that surname were subject to and lost the understanding of that history of what they were subject to and therefore lost their connection. Okay? Time never was, brother. So once again, thank you, Brother Grant from the House of Grant. All right? Please spread this word, brother. Please. All right? If you want to invite me to your platform, I know you got one. I'd love to be able to be examined to show myself approved. All right? Not in your eyes, but in the eyes of our people. Okay? Because our people need a savior. All right? So with that, I love you all. I'm going to greet at you as I always have greeted you. And that's in peace and love. Talk to you later. Peace. Thank you for coming, Brother Grant from the House of Grant. See you at